technology. Here are some more stats on the clean economy that Detroit ranks 4th nationally in EV technology specialization. Grand Rapids ranks 2nd in green consumer product specialization, mostly driven by Steelcase, actually. And then when you look at workforce intensity, so the percentage of workers, of all workers that are employed in the clean energy sector, Holland, Monroe, and Niles all have higher concentrations of those workers than the U.S. average. So really great news there. In terms of exports, I mean, Detroit ranks 1st among the 20 largest metros nationally in terms of export intensity, so that's the amount of the gross domestic product, the percentage of gross domestic product that's exported. Grand Rapids ranks 8th among the 100 largest. And then you can see from the chart here that 10 of Michigan's 14 metro areas are more export intensive than the U.S. average, so a real strength there. Okay, and so then moving on to my third point is that the state really needs a metro and urban strategy to really leverage and capitalize on these strengths that I've quickly run through with you. And we had 3 categories of recommendations. I have a slide on each. But basically, we really need to strengthen that link between innovation and manufacturing. We need to support talent development, so workforce programs, and welcoming talent from outside of Michigan's borders, actually from outside of the U.S. And then we need to make targeted investments that leverage the distinct assets in the urban cores of our metro areas. In terms of linking between innovation and manufacturing, one of our recommendations, and we've talked to Mike Finney, the head of MEDC, about this, and he completely gets it, is to reorient the 21st Century Jobs Fund so that it's more focused on the linkage between idea generation and the deployment of those ideas versus focusing on single companies and helping them only with the idea generation aspect, and also focusing more on small and medium-sized manufacturers. They produce much of the content of manufactured goods, but they have very limited capacity in terms of linking to the idea side, the R&D side, the linking with universities, attracting capital. So, I don't want to use wonky terms, but creating this kind of innovation-linked manufacturing infrastructure or ecosystems versus picking off single companies like the 21st Century Jobs Fund currently does. We also had recommendations on attracting more foreign direct investment into our manufacturing base. At the county level and the state level, there's a lot of activity, trade missions, whatnot, to bring in foreign direct investment. It's very disorganized. So trying to get a baseline assessment of what exactly is going on in Michigan to attract foreign direct investment, and then having a cohesive strategy so that we're a united front when we go to other countries. And then bolstering exports. The governor kind of got out ahead of us while we were writing this report. He's really keen on exports. The My Export program that MEDC is managing, really our report is just saying keep doing what you're doing. The bridge is really critical to help with our export strategy. So this is a place that Michigan's actually doing quite well. Talent and workforce. The first 2 recommendations have to deal with how we're deploying our workforce development dollars. Most of those are pass-throughs from the feds. We really need to blow up the federal workforce program, would be kind of fixing the root cause of all the problems with our workforce programs. And again, in the presence of Larry, I'm not going to go into detail because he'll go into detail on workforce training. But we had some kind of Band-Aid approaches that we recommended to the state. Much of the problem has to do with the way that the workforce training programs and dollars are deployed don't align with real economic regions in the state, and so they're kind of stepping all over each other. Also, there's not a lot of employer input into these programs, and so you're training folks for jobs that don't really exist because there's not that connection to employers. So, and then we have recommendations on attracting and keeping skilled immigrants. Michigan does really well in terms of the percentage of our immigrant population that's highly educated. And unlike Arizona and other southern states, we actually understand the economic driver that immigrant populations can be in our urban areas. And so we have some specific guidance, and isn't really rocket science about how to help them get particular licenses and certifications so that they can stay here, tailoring job programs to immigrants. I mean, things as easy as helping them with cover letters, resumes, getting into professional networks because they're not from here, they don't have those. So a series of recommendations on that. And then finally, the last set of recommendations deal with the assets in the urban cores. We have a recommendation on how the state can help with technical assistance and financial assistance, a number of metro-led clusters. And this is kind of turning the current approach on its head, where the state has said, okay, we have 4 to 6 clusters that we think the state would be really good at. Clean energy would be an example. And we're going to really drive those down to the metro levels. We convened a number of mayors from across the state and had them present to us their economic development strategies, and they understand their assets and they understand their strengths, and they're really working to build on those, and the state should be listening to that and really have more of a bottom-up approach to supporting these clusters. And then my final recommendation deals with some of the stuff that's more traditional urban policy, looking at what you might have heard of as placemaking, but we would call this kind of placemaking on steroids, where the state would pick 1 to 3 urban innovation districts. And I think the best way to talk about these is to show you an example of what I mean. Midtown Detroit is a perfect example of what we would call an innovation district. And these are places that not only have kind of the physical assets, the waterfront, green space, cultural amenities, entertainment, but they also have the special sauce that's going to make them really competitive in the next economy. So like anchor institutions, eds and meds, you know, Wayne State University, we've got the hospital centers, but we also have the DIA, Belle Isle, the riverfront. So these are really special places, and there are not very many of them. And the state traditionally has more of a peanut butter approach to helping, for example, core communities. They have a core communities program. There are 140 core communities in this program, and we're saying, no, there are really only a few places in Michigan that are really going to turn around the regions and the state. I mean, if we can make Midtown Detroit sing, that's going to have ramifications for the whole state and help Detroit really plug into the next economy. And what we've asked is that the state have a grant program to support this and technical assistance, aligning existing resources, but also what we're calling a 21st Century Places Fund. And I know looking for new dollars is kind of a stretch right now, but there are a lot of existing resources if we can get transportation and housing and others working all towards helping this work. And there are places in Lansing, the Michigan Ave between East Lansing and the Capitol is a perfect example of a potential innovation district. Grand Rapids, Michigan Street, I think it's called. So not just Detroit, but other places. And I think that's it. You can download the report on our website, pscinc.com. And my contact information is there. I think, yeah, the slides are in your packet. And that's it. I made it.